I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
Yes guys, what's up? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again for another UFC full card breakdown and predictions video. Before we move any further, make sure you head kick the like button and tag up the subscribe button too. This breakdown is going to be Jessica Eye versus Cynthia Calvillo, which is a very tough main event to predict. Before we get into this card, we're going to do what we always do. Take a look at the predictions from the last card, do a quick recap and look at the bets too. Prediction wise, 9 out of 12, so pretty good with the predictions. The bets, we didn't lose money, we didn't make money. This time I used a very good cover bet. You know, if the fight was going to go 25 minutes, it was only ever going to be Amanda Nunes. So didn't lose money, didn't make money, enjoyed my night, good fights as well. So let's get into a quick recap of the last card. If you don't want to hear that recap, you can use the timestamps in the description below to move ahead. Herbert Burns versus Evan Dunham. What can we say? The jiu-jitsu practitioner showcased that beautiful jiu-jitsu, got it done in beautiful fashion very quickly as well. Devin Clark and Alonzo Menifield. Now, I did say if Alonzo couldn't finish Devin inside that first round, then Devin's going to make it a very tough fight. He was able to prove me wrong and he did exactly that. So credit to Devin Clark there. Alex Perez, a clinic with the low kicks, the composure in his striking. Jussier Formiga not really there in that fight. Credit to Alex Perez. Maki Pitolo getting it done as a plus 150 underdog. That was very pleasing to see. I basically said, you know, to beat Charles Byrd, you just have to give him a little bit of adversity. And that's what Maki done. You know, he came out in that second round, wasn't tired, and Charles Byrd used a lot of energy in that first round. Cody Stamann put on a beautiful performance, an emotional performance, you know, held it all in, completely burst into tears after that fight. But, you know, what can you say, man? Cody Stamann, he done what he had to do. He was completely there for that whole fight. And you could see towards the end of that third round, you know, everything that he held back was starting to come out. But credit to both guys in that fight. Brian Kelleher too. Ian Heinisch getting it done really quick with a beautiful right hand. Clipped Gerald Meerschaert, and that was pretty much that for that fight. I felt Ian would be more likely to be the guy using good, powerful boxing in that matchup, and that's exactly how it went down. Alex Caceres, beautiful performance against an up-and-coming guy in Chase Hooper. We spoke about Chase Hooper not being a powerful kickboxer, too much of a good striker, more of a grappler, only a grappler. But the guy is only 20 years old. You know, he is going to grow into his body and he is going to become a better fighter. And that will be a learning lesson for him against Alex Caceres. On the flip side, you have to give a lot of credit to Alex. You know, he is a gatekeeper, but he has a fun style and he showed up and proved he is a top guy. Sean O'Malley, this guy just gets better and better. The right hand fake uppercut, then fake the left hand and come straight back over with the right. Beautiful. You know, this guy is becoming a real prospect in the UFC. Neil Magny used that veteran experience, never slowed down against Tony Martin. Quite a close fight, and I believe there was a 30-27 in there, which I was a little bit surprised with. I don't feel Tony Martin done a disservice to himself. You know, he did show up in that fight, but Neil Magny, man, the experience, so many fights in the UFC now, and that was another pleasing performance, especially coming off that performance against the Leech as well. Aljamain Sterling got it done real quick against my boy Corey Sandhagen. As Aljamain would say, he is the human backpack. If he takes your back, you're not going anywhere. And that's what we saw. You know, Aljamain Sterling is a top 135er, and so is Corey Sandhagen. You know, Corey Sandhagen is still a top 135er, and he will be back. But that was Aljamain's night. Cody Garbrandt, what can we say, picture perfect right hand. That right hand sent a Sun Cell into another realm. Just beautiful. Pleasing to see Cody getting back to winning ways. You know, it's been 4 years since he's had a win. And to get a win in that fashion, so pleasing. Amanda Nunes main event, what can we say? It was dominant. Could she have pushed more of a pace? Looked to finish Felicia Spencer? Probably. You know, she came very close to finishing Spencer a few times, but quite relaxed in her performance. You know, not really looking to finish too much. More playing with Felicia, letting her know there's levels to the game. But yeah, very, very dominant performance from the best female fighter in the game. Alright guys, let's get into breaking down and making predictions for this card. Fight number 1, we have Anthony Aquaman Ivy versus Christian the Beast Aguilar. And we're going to start with Ivy. So Ivy comes into this fight 8 wins, 2 losses as a pro, making his UFC debut. Training out of Brazilian top team in Texas. Ivy seems to be quite a composed fighter for only having 11 pro fights. Fights out of the conventional stance. Doesn't look to overcommit or fire the power hand over and over like a guy like Chaos Williams. You know, Ivy seems to have a pretty decent ground game too. He's finished all of his fights, whether it's submission or TKO. The opponent, Christian the Beast Aguilar, comes into this fight 13 wins, 6 losses as a pro, making his UFC debut. Watching tape on Aguilar, I've seen some nice stuff. He does seem to be quicker than Ivy, and maybe the boxing looks to be a little sharper too. It's always a tough fight to predict when both guys are making their UFC debuts. Speed, I believe, sits on the side of Christian, but size and length sits with Ivy. When I look at both of these fighters, Ivy seems like the more natural welterweight out of both of these guys. I think it could be a similar type of fight where Rodriguez and Gabe Green, you know, where Gabe found the most success keeping Rodriguez on the outside late in that fight. I believe Aguilar would have to keep Ivy on the outside to find success. But I do see Ivy having more success in this matchup than Christian Aguilar. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Anthony Ivy via TKO in round number 2. And we take a look at some odds with that matchup. We have Ivy coming in -180, -190. Christian returning +160, +150. So those odds, you know, I pretty much agree with those odds. They could be maybe a little bit closer, but Ivy just seems quite composed from the tape I've seen. Doesn't fire that power hand too much, really reads the opponent, good ground game, and naturally a welterweight too. So my pick there is going to be Ivy. Fight number 2, we have Jordan Native Psycho Griffin versus Darrick Minner, and we're going to start with Jordan Griffin. So Jordan comes into this fight 1 win, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a freestyle wrestler, pretty good wherever the fight goes. Jiu-jitsu and kickboxing. Fight intelligence is where Griffin lets himself down, in my opinion. Looking back at Griffin's last fight, he was able to eventually find the submission against TJ Brown. Better late than never, in my opinion also. The opponent, Darrick Minner, comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. 24-11 as a pro. So quite an experienced fighter. If we look at his UFC debut, it's clear to see Darrick is a relentless grappler. Whether you're able to find a submission or not, Darrick will look to test your grappling ability. The heart you have in a grueling grappling contest, that's where Darrick is going to find his bread and butter. You know, that's what he's all about. When it comes to strength in the clinch, determination to get the takedown and end up on top, I think Darrick takes that. Jordan Griffin absolutely has the jiu-jitsu to catch Darrick at any given moment. But if Darrick doesn't slow down and become fatigued the way TJ Brown did, I think Derek could avoid all submission attempts and sneak a win over Jordan Griffin. It's a tough one because I do like Jordan Griffin. He's a well-rounded guy, but I just feel more comfortable going with the guy that's, not afraid to keep fighting the same way. Even if the opponent can beat him there, I admire that about Darrick Minner. Just fighting the same type of way. I'm going to take you down. I'm going to use my grappling. I'm going to use my jiu-jitsu. Whether you can beat him there or not, he's looking to stay the same. And I admire that. So for those reasons, I'll take Darrick Minner via decision. And the odds, we have Darrick Minner coming in plus 140. So that's my first underdog on this card. As always, guys, I haven't seen these odds yet. I always check them with you. Jordan Griffin coming back minus 160, minus 170. And I respect that, because Jordan Griffin is a good fighter, has very good jiu-jitsu, good kickboxing. He's been in there with guys like Dan Ige, Chas Skelly. Jordan Griffin is a good guy. But I think Darrick Minner has a good chance in this fight too. He's a relentless grappler and he's going to come for you. Whether you can use your own jiu-jitsu and beat him there or not, Darrick Minner, I like his determination. So that's going to be my pick for this one. Moving into the next one, we have Tyson Nam versus Zarek Adashev. And we're going to start with Tyson. So Tyson comes into this fight 0 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a striker inside the octagon. Tyson has been completely outclassed in both of his UFC fights. Albeit the opponents are Sergio Pettis and Kate Kara, but this is the highest level. Tyson, in my opinion, doesn't fire enough. Sometimes you have to stop reading and start firing. Start to make your opponent read more. Fighting is a reactive sport. And not many guys can watch you for a couple minutes and figure you out, like Anderson Silva. For me, Tyson Nam simply needs to be way more active in this fight than he has been in his 2 UFC fights so far. The opponent, Zarek Adashev, comes into this fight 3 wins, 1 loss as a pro, making his UFC debut. Previously fighting in Bellator, this guy, like I said, has only had 3 wins in MMA. He's had 4 MMA fights, but he is a very talented fighter. Skill-wise, I really like the look of Adashev. His kickboxing is tricky. He'll switch stances a lot. His boxing equally as good as his kicking. He seems to be a very intelligent fighter too. Looking at this matchup before doing research, I felt Tyson Nam could get his first win here. But then I saw how tricky Adashev it really is with his kickboxing. And I kind of changed my mind a little bit. This is still a step down though for Tyson. So I do believe it's his best chance at getting his first win. If Tyson has re-watched his fights, he'll notice he needs to be more active. And if he is more active, this will be a really fun striking battle to watch because Adashev can become very aggressive. He can become very aggressive in his switching of stances, his kicking and his boxing. So if both guys engage, I don't see this fight going 3 rounds. This is quite an exciting 125 matchup for myself to think about. But I'm going to have to stick with Adashev here to get his debut win in the UFC. If Tyson Nam can come out and be just a bit more active, then maybe he can get his first win. But I'm going to take the newcomer here, Zarek Adashev, via TKO in round number 3. And I don't believe we have any odds for this matchup yet, but I would assume Adashev would be maybe a minus 150, minus 160. I don't think it should be any further from that, Adashev, only 4 MMA fights. Tyson Nam, primarily a striker. Adashev, primarily a striker. Adashev for me in that one. Fight number 4, we have Julia Raging Panda Avila versus Gina Mazzani. and we're going to start with the Raging Panda. So Julia comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. Her debut was a clean performance, very dominant and clean. Julia really showcased how well-rounded she is against Pani. She's now fighting Gina Mazany, who would have maybe been a step up in competition a few years ago, but as of right now in 2020, I'm not sure if Gina is really a step up for Pani. The opponent, Gina Mazany, comes into this fight 1 win, 3 losses inside the UFC. Completely destroyed by Macy Chiasson in her last UFC fight. Tried to engage in a firefight, left her chin in a stationary position. Next thing she knows, she's waking up. Gina Mazany lucky to be getting a call back to the UFC for this fight in my opinion. I'd be lying to myself and you guys if I was to make a case here for Gina. Now this is a fight of course, right? You've only got to land one good one, as Bisping would say. But that one good one, I believe, resides with Julia. She's fresher, stronger, more confident, just on the up. Whereas Gina has been on a good decline, you know? So my pick in this one is going to be Julia Avila via TKO in round number 1. And we get some odds on this one if I can find them. And yeah, my breakdown really resembles the odds. Julia coming in minus 500. Gina coming back plus 380, nearly plus 400. If any of you guys are taking Gina at those odds, please let me know in the comments why and how you think she can win this fight. Obviously, the odds on Julia are, I mean, I feel like they're right, but you wouldn't bet them, you know, minus 500 unless you're a millionaire and you just have money to throw away. Yeah, minus 500 on Julia, no play for me, but that is my pick there. Moving into the next one, we have Charles Boston Strong Rosa versus Kevin, the Angel of Death Aguilar. And we're going to start with Boston Strong. So Charles comes into this fight 3 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a grappler inside the octagon, a jiu-jitsu fighter. Charles is getting back inside the octagon after a 5-week layoff. Only fought 5 weeks ago. Completely dominated by Bryce Mitchell. Never gave up in that fight, which has to be admired in my opinion. Showed a lot of heart to escape a lot of positions most guys would have tapped in. Charles is stepping up to 55 for this fight. Whether that's a good move or not, we'll find out soon. Kevin Aguilar comes into this fight 2-2 inside the UFC. Primarily a striker inside the octagon. A tough fighter who will take your shots just to land his own shots. The type of guy that's banking on putting you away at some point in a bloodbath type of fight. Kevin also stepping up to 155 in this matchup. This one I have been quite back and forth on. Charles definitely has the jiu-jitsu to wrap Kevin up, but Kevin definitely has the power and toughness to grind out a guy like Charles Rosa, you know? It's one of those ones where you can make good arguments and points for both sides. Maybe footwork is the winner. Charles using a lot of circling and a lot of kicks. But this is going to be fought in a smaller cage, you know, and that's hard to do in a smaller cage. If Kevin has been training hard, if he pushes a tough pace, forces Charles to brawl, he could find a devastating punch at some point. So yeah, my pick is going to be Kevin Aguilar, but like I said, I've been very back and forth. I think it's a winnable fight for either guy, really. Both stepping up an extra £10 too. You know, that's another factor to take into place here. My pick is going to be Kevin Aguilar via TKO in round number 2. And we look at the odds. I think the odds should be a little closer, man. Kevin Aguilar coming in minus 170. Charles Rosa returning plus 150. They should be a little closer. I mean, Charles Rosa's a good guy, man. Good jiu-jitsu. You know, I think he's too much of an underdog there. Maybe those odds will become a little closer come fight night. But yeah, Charles has a good shot. Kevin Aguilar, like I just said, man, tough as nails. Everything he throws is to put you away. And that's scary. You know, fighting against that type of guy, you have to be on your A game. You know, and Charles Rosa is going to have to move a lot in a small octagon or use his jiu-jitsu. The pick is going to be Kevin Aguilar on that one. But the odds should be a little closer come fight night, in my opinion. Moving into the next one, we have Maria Agapova versus Hannah Shockwave Cyphers. And we're going to start with Maria. So Maria comes into this fight 8 wins, 1 loss as a pro, making her UFC debut. Primarily a striker inside the octagon. Although she has finished a few of her fights via submission, even ground and pound too. She doesn't mind hitting the mat. I like Maria's style though. She bounces a lot on the feet, uses good in and out motions. Her boxing is quick, sharp, quick hands. Maybe not powerful, but over a 5-minute round, she will tag you with her hands. She has good boxing. The opponent, Hannah Cyphers, comes into this fight 2 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a Muay Thai striker inside the octagon. Hannah has been super active recently. She fought Mackenzie Dern just a few days ago, able to have a quick turnaround due to not taking any striking damage in that fight. Hannah seems to lose fights where her opponent can take her down. Ironically, I believe Hannah actually has to take down Maria in this fight to stand a good chance. Looking at this matchup in a striking scenario, I believe Maria will be just a little too unorthodox for Hannah. The constant movement, the speed, just switching it up a lot. That'll be too much for Hannah. Now if Hannah can pressure Maria, force a brawl, or even put Maria up against the fence, that's where I see Hannah having good success in this fight. Technical ability and speed versus farm, strength and power. I'm going to take the more technical fighter in this matchup, and that's Maria Agapova in my opinion. Does Hannah have a good chance based off of experience, power, and even being able to grapple herself? Yes. But for me, I'm going to take Maria Agapova. I just think she's going to be too quick for Hannah on the feet. So for those reasons, Agapova via decision. And we take a look at the odds. I think they should be a little bit closer, man. I think Hannah is being disrespected just a little bit. Plus 200 on Hannah. Maria coming back minus 220, minus 230. Maria being around minus 170 is what I feel. But yeah, man, Hannah Cyphers, if she looks to grapple, put Maria up against the fence, use her knees, chop down Maria with kicks, just be that pressure fighter, be the bully inside the octagon, I think Hannah has a good chance. But if Hannah plays into a kickboxing battle over a 5-minute round, Maria's going to use good, quick boxing, man. And I think she's going to beat Hannah in that type of fight. You know what time it is, guys. Do I even need to say what time it is anymore? If you've been smoking this whole time and you're smoking now, amen. If you waited to smoke with me, amen. If you're not a smoker and you enjoy the smoke breaks, triple amen. Amen, guys. I've got training in like an hour's time and it's jiu-jitsu today. So for anyone who's going to leave the comment regarding don't smoke if you're training, it's jiu-jitsu today. So we're good to go. And this is like my 5th smoke of the week, you know, cutting down completely, like nearly 95% cut down. Will that 5% ever go? I'm not going to lie to you guys, it probably won't, okay? A lot of you guys mentioned recovery with smoking as well. You know, recovery and training go hand in hand. and smoking is going to help that. So that 5% is never going to go. I have cut down a lot, but yeah, that 5% is never going to go. As always, the comments you guys leave on every card, you know, I can't express enough how much motivation that gives me to keep breaking down these cards. You know, I love that you guys enjoy this channel. I love that you enjoy the smoke breaks, and that inspires me. You know, you guys are my inspiration to break down these fights week in, week out, you know, and I respect that. I'm not going to lie, guys, the smoke is hitting me harder than it normally does. But we're going to stay on track when we're done. And we're going to predict these fights right. We're not going to get caught up in the smoke. But yeah, man, like I said, I appreciate everyone that leaves the comments. I read them all. 90% of them I respond to. You know, week in, week out, I see the same names. I see new names. Yeah, I respect it. I love it. And I love this training game as well. You know, so many of you guys engaging with the training. Some of you even suggesting what I should buy next. You know, I got the heavy bag set up. A few of you guys mentioned other tools to use. And I've looked into that as well. So I respect all of the advice coming my way regarding training, whether it's just mentioning a fight, whatever it is. The engagement with this community is beautiful. Alright guys, let's get into breaking down the rest of this main card. Jordan Espinosa versus Mark De La Rosa, and we're going to start with Jordan first. Jordan comes into this fight 1 win, 2 losses inside the UFC. Jordan's debut was clean, a lot of footwork, a popping jab with some good kicks as well. Since that debut, he's had 2 pretty bad losses. Outclassed and beaten pretty quickly in both of those fights against Matt Chanel and Alex Perez. If Jordan looks to get back to that debut performance, a lot of movement inside the octagon, I think he could bounce back with a good win in this fight. The opponent, Mark De La Rosa, comes into this fight 2 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC, primarily a grappler inside the octagon. Mark has bounced between 25 and 35, now on a 3-fight losing streak, potentially make or break situation for Mark De La Rosa. 4 losses in a row in the big time, you're gonna get cut. This really is a pick'em in my opinion. Mark has more experience and he is a better grappler than Espinosa. However, if this fight is kept upright and De La Rosa fatigues the way he's pretty much fatigued in most of his fights, especially his last fight against Rulian, I think Jordan could take advantage of that, land those kicks and move a lot, similar to the debut of Jordan Espinosa. Like I said, this really is a pick'em, but my pick is going to be Jordan Espinosa via decision. And we have Jordan Espinosa coming in -150, -160. Mark De La Rosa returning +130, +140. So yeah, that line may be a little bit closer. Jordan should be around -140, -130. But yeah, that line's pretty okay, I guess. Jordan Espinosa is going to be my pick there. Mark De La Rosa, a small underdog, and rightfully so. This is a pick'em. Moving into the next one, we have Andre Touchy-Feely versus Charles Air Jourdain. And we're going to start with Touchy-Feely. So Feely comes into this fight 8 wins, 6 losses inside the UFC. Pretty much a UFC veteran at this point. His record isn't great, but Touchy-Feely has fought a lot of top competition. He's a very good kickboxer, a variety of kicks. His jabs inside the pocket, especially against Miles Jury and even Shaman Moraes. There's a lot of evidence that Andre Feely is a top fighter. Not the best chin in the world, but what a tricky guy to figure out inside the octagon. Charles Jourdain comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. Jourdain coming off a huge win over a guy pretty much all of us enjoy watching in Doo Ho Choi. Huge performance, and credit where credit is due, as always. In some ways, Jourdain is kind of similar to Andre Fili when it comes to trying to be tricky and unpredictable with kicks. Stylistically, it's a fun one to think about. Both guys will pretty much be looking in the mirror in this fight, but I have to side with experience. Fili has fought a lot of top level guys, and I'm not taking anything away from Charles Jourdain, because like I said, Charles had a huge win in his last fight, and that win alone will give him a lot of confidence in this fight. But I just think Fili has seen more, and for those reasons I have to side with experience in this striking battle. So I'm going to take Andre Fili via decision. And we take a look at the odds. I think Charles Jourdain is being disrespected a little bit there. I think they're similar guys. You know, both of these guys love to kickbox. They love to use their length, the unpredictability. The line should be quite a bit closer. But yeah, I am going to be on the minus 220 side of Fili. Charles Jourdain coming back plus 180. I see a closer fight than that, to be honest. But I do have to stick with Andre Fili in this matchup. Ray, the Taz-Mexican Devil, Borg versus Merab, the Machine, Dvalishvili. And we're going to start with Ray Borg. Ray comes into this fight 7 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a grappler inside the octagon. I feel like I've spoken about Ray a lot. Like recently, I feel like this is deja vu. What can we say that we haven't already said recently about Ray Borg? Pretty much nothing. Ray's an incredible wrestler. His scrambling ability is 10 out of 10. Relentless with his grappling. You know, he lost to Ricky Simone purely down to body strength. It's not that he's not technically as good as Ricky when it comes to wrestling. He just wasn't big enough, wasn't strong enough in that fight. Merab Dvalishvili comes into this fight 3 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a wrestler inside the octagon. Just like Borg, Merab is a relentless wrestler. He scrambles very well in wrestling situations. If he's not grappling, he's being crazy in there. A wide variety of crazy kicks. His striking isn't technical. It's more power and unpredictability when Merab is striking. Similar to Ray's last fight, I just think the opponent is too big and too strong. Ray is better at 25 with his credentials in pushing a hard pace and basically drowning the opponent. Merab does something very similar. The difference for me is this fight is taking place in Merab's weight class, just like it did with Ricky Simone. So for those reasons, I have to take the bigger, the stronger guy, and that's Merab. So I'll take Merab via decision. And the odds are, I think people are catching on here that when Ray Borg is fighting a wrestler at 35, he's not the wrestler that he is at 25. And that's not because of technique. It's because of strength. Merab comes in at minus 400. Ray Borg comes in plus 330, plus 300. The odds are insane, but if everyone's imagining that type of battle again where both guys are going to wrestle and Ray's just not big enough, not strong enough, you know, he's naturally a 25er. It's not like he can't beat guys with his style at 35. But when you put a guy in there that does something similar to what Ray Borg does, he just gets nullified with his own game. So yeah, the pick is going to be Merab there. Co-main event, we have Carl Baby K Robinson versus Marvin, the Italian Dream Vettori. And we're going to start with Carl Robinson. Carl comes into this fight 4 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a kickboxer inside the octagon. This fight was supposed to take place a few weeks ago. Carl had to pull out of that fight. The only adversities Carl has had to overcome inside the octagon is grappling, pretty much. Apart from that, Carl looks good in a kickboxing situation. Power, composure. Carl will even look to grapple when he knows he has the advantage there, which shows me that he has worked on that weakness of his game. Marvin Vettori comes into this fight 4 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. Primarily a well-rounded guy inside the octagon. A powerful puncher, a proven grappler. Marvin can definitely hold his own when it comes to wrestling. Just an evolving mixed martial artist. A real Italian fighter. You know, maybe the closest guy to beating Israel Adesanya to date. I know some of you guys will say Kelvin Gastelum, but in my opinion, Marvin Vettori has been the closest. My original pick was Marvin Vettori, and I'm going to stick with that pick. Both of these guys have had more time to prepare for each other, but I don't think that'll change anything that would have happened originally in this fight. Carl is maybe a better kickboxer, but when it comes to heart, conditioning, passion, confidence, I'm liking Marvin there. I feel he will find a way to overcome Carl at some point in this fight. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Marvin Vettori via TKO in round number 2. And the odds are kind of similar, I believe, to what they were originally. Marvin Vettori coming in minus 220, Carl Roberson coming back plus 190. And this is quite a close matchup when you really think about it. Carl Roberson does have good underdog odds. But, you know, I don't pick based on odds. You know, I pretend numbers don't exist. Marvin Vettori for me is going to be the pick. I'm not going to play him a lot at minus 220. But yeah, Marvin Vettori is going to be the pick in this one. Alright, homies, main event time. We have Jessica Evil Eye versus Cynthia Calvillo. And we're going to start with Jessica. So Jessica comes into this fight 5 wins, 6 losses inside the UFC. An experienced female fighter inside the octagon, having fought one of the best in Valentina. Although it couldn't have ended any worse for Jessica, she still got in there with one of the very best, and you have to give credit to that. Jessica was able to smother Vivian in her last fight, took away the kickboxing, used her experience to nullify Vivian with her wrestling. Jessica for sure has the experience and the ability to win this main event fight. Cynthia Calvillo comes into this fight 5 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw inside the UFC. Primarily a grappler inside the octagon, a jiu-jitsu fighter. However, Cynthia has become a better striker over her last few fights. On the back foot, she'll use her kicks or even time takedowns if her opponent is the aggressor. She showed up quite late in her last fight, didn't really get going until the last round. It's understandable though, because Marina Rodriguez is a long girl with good Muay Thai. Jessica and Cynthia are both good wrestlers. Jessica may be the better pressure grappler. She'll use her boxing to pressure the opponent and then engage with takedowns, whereas Cynthia seems to circle more circling of the octagon than pressure. In the smaller octagon, there will be grappling. You know, there's no way this fight takes place without a grappling situation. I have a feeling Cynthia will just be able to use her jiu-jitsu, whether it's taking the back of Jessica or even snatching an arm. This is a really tough main event to predict, because I even took Jessica in her return fight after the Valentina loss, and she really used her experience well in that fight. But I just rate Cynthia a bit higher than Vivian. She's just more well-rounded, I believe. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Cynthia Calvillo to use her kickboxing on the back foot, use her jiu-jitsu when she needs to, and potentially win a very close decision in this matchup. So my pick is going to be Cynthia Calvillo via decision. And those odds are perfect, man. Both of these girls are very good grapplers. Both of these girls are strong. Jessica Eye has good pressure boxing, transitions that into her grappling. Cynthia likes to circle, uses kicks, and isn't afraid to grapple with anyone. You know, both of these girls in a position where, you know, very winnable fight for either girl. The odds are -110 either side. And that's exactly right. You know, even Cynthia's +100 right now on William Hill. So I'm going to have to bet her before that changes. But these odds are exactly the same. And rightfully so. This is a winnable fight for either fighter. But my pick is going to be Cynthia Calvillo. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the breakdown as always. Leave your comments below who you're taking in that very tough main event to predict. Let me know your underdogs, everything. Let's get engaging on this card. Alright, peace.